Welcome Home Go, inspiring you to find ways to serve, engage, and make a difference. Making it easier for you to find hope in your busy world. Our original production on Good Life 45, where hope happens. Go, make a difference.
Hi everyone, I'm Barbara Beck and I want to thank you for tuning in to Welcome Home Go. 30 minutes of discussions on challenging topics that will inspire you to go, make a difference. This shorter version, a spin-off of Welcome Home, was created because we know you're super busy. So we've made it even easier for you to find hope, to grow in your faith walk, and then go and make a difference in this challenging world of ours. You'll still get the same meaningful, inspiring discussions on topics that we believe Jesus would want us to respond to by serving wherever we're called. Our focus on Welcome Home Go is to encourage you to find ways to serve that fit your lifestyle and your set of God-given gifts. These next few minutes together, let's listen and learn how to mobilize our families, our friends, our people, and do something to make a difference in someone's life. Maybe it's just one person, but go, serve, be the hands and feet of Jesus, and enjoy with me now. Welcome Home Go.
Go, make a difference.
Hey everyone, I'm so glad that you're part of our program today. I have such special guests with us today. My heart is just overflowing with gratitude for God bringing this threesome across our path today. You're going to get a huge blessing. If you've never listened to God Stories Radio, it is every single Thursday night live, or you can go and listen to the podcast, which is what I do all the time as I'm walking, sometimes an hour a day. I'll just listen to their podcast and I'll get so much out of hearing the different testimonies from people around the world, and they have just done such a great job with this ministry, and they're here today to be able to encourage you and to tell you a little bit about how God Stories Radio got started, and maybe I even have a little bit of time for some of their testimonies as well. I'd like to welcome to the show Mike Jewett. Hey Mike.
Hello.
So glad to have you here.
Well, thank you for giving us the opportunity.
Would not have missed this opportunity for the world. You guys bless me all the time, so thank you. And Fritz and Tina, thank you guys too. I want to say your name right, Amrine.
Yes, you got
right?
it.
Metcalf Amrine, but okay, very good. Nice German name, right?
Yes.
Yes, very good.
And
now, you guys have not been married very long.
No.
Right? How long?
3 years.
3 years. That's great. So you're still on your honeymoon?
Yes.
We'd like to think so, but we have a house full jointly, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, very good. Well, let's talk about, maybe Mike, you can help us know how God Stories Radio got started.
Wow. God Stories Radio, there was a bunch of things. You know, first, Father gave me the word radio. I got it on a fast and in my sleep, or it's REM sleep, if I remember correctly, how it's called.
So you actually saw the words radio?
In black letters.
Wow.
And I went to him again, asking, because Charles Stanley, I just was introduced to Charles Stanley a couple days prior, and it was July 8th when I went on the fast, and on July 9th, if you go listen to his radio message on July 9th, 2008, it said that if God tells you something, you can go back and ask him if you're not sure what's going on there. So I did. And the next morning, July 10th, I woke up, or in my REM sleep, and in bigger, bolder black letters was the word radio.
You saw it again?
Yes.
Wow. And so what do you do with that? You know God's speaking to you, but I mean, you're not a DJ. You haven't had a lot of training in radio communication,
I was
right?
the biggest introvert you would ever want to have known.
No way.
Yes, absolutely.
So what did you do with that?
Started praying about it. What do you want? You know, what am I going to do in radio? Am I going to be on the radio? Am I going to work for radio? Am I going to do this or that? But then in June of 2010, he brought me in so many places, and he brought me in 7 places in 7 years, not my own, and that was 5 years ago, and I'm still in that place. But in Chicopee, Massachusetts, I was at a picnic with a group from the church. It was a worship team and some production people and all. And I was actually talking to one of the guitar players. And I was telling him about the radio thing, and then shortly before there I was given the words testimonies with like background music. And he actually said, I would listen to that. And so as I looked at the dates and everything else, it was a little bit less than 3 years later from that point that God Stories Radio did its first session on May 23rd, 2013.
So how did you know Fritz? Fritz, now you do have a background in radio, right?
I do have a background in radio, and it's
Okay.
kind of funny, the way we met was I was going through a pretty rough time, and Mike and I have a saying called, we're tired. And we know that saying, and we know what that means. And the night I met Mike, I walked into real life, never having been there before. My brother-in-law just kind of dropped me off. I was really brokenhearted, and I was tired.
Were you a Christian at the time? Did you know Jesus personally?
I did,
Okay.
you know, but I had kind of semi-turned my back on God. I had experienced some success in business and gained some wealth and had all the toys and stuff like that. So shockingly enough, the Lord chose to get my attention that way, because 2010 was kind of a rough year for me. I had to undergo a second open heart surgery, and then my daughter is a special needs child, so I ended up becoming a single dad to a special needs child. So I had reasoned in my mind that she would be okay, that my brother and sister-in-law would take care of her. So when I walked into the church that night, I was ready. I was contemplating what to do, and Mikey happened to be at the door. I walked into a Celebrate Recovery, and Mike was greeting at the door, and he said he never greets. He was filling in for somebody. I walked in, he reached out his hand, and he said, "How are you doing, brother?" And I said, "I'm tired."
Wow.
Like that, tears down my... I saw his eyes. I can recall it gets as big as $50.
Because you got it.
I
You
knew,
understood.
because
You were tired.
I was tired at one point too.
Yeah.
I think what's really important about this, I want you to keep talking about that though, and our viewers need to hear this loudly and clearly, is that we can be tired as Christians. We can know Jesus and have that personal relationship with Him in our hearts, and yet life is tough. Life can be hard, and we need to have those antenna up and listen for when somebody is hurting like that. So praise God, Mike, that you understood that. You embraced Him, figuratively speaking.
He's never left my side
Wow.
ever since. We've been friends ever since, and we met up for coffee at Denny's. I'll never forget it. And then he says, I've had this crazy vision, you know, and God keeps telling me radio. And then my eyes get as big as $50. And I said, my background's in radio.
Wow. Wow.
So I know we're limited on time, but I got to tell you this. So I said, Mike, why don't you just come over? We'll set up a couple of microphones. We won't plug them in. We'll just talk to each other. And this poor guy, he sweat profusely. He was breathing hard, and he could barely get a word out. And then a month later, we did our first podcast.
Just the two of you together.
Yes,
Okay.
10 or 11 minutes long, and we looked at each other and went, where did that come from?
Wow.
You know, so that's kind of how God Stories Radio was birthed.
Well, it is an incredibly impactful ministry, and you reached Tina something like you always open up the show telling us about all the Facebook likes and the fact that there are, 92, how many countries?
92 countries at this
92
point.
countries.
that we know of.
92 countries
That we
are
know of.
listening. See, I think sometimes people forget about the impact that radio can have, and actually TV too now because of the internet.
Yes.
But you guys are all over the place. How did you get involved with the God Stories?
Yeah, it was kind of interesting because I never expected to be a part of it. I knew that he was doing it because when we were dating, he used to invite me over to come and watch the shows, you know, while they were recording. And so I'd kind of gotten used to seeing what they do. And obviously when we got married, God Stories Radio needed a new home. And I wasn't so sure about it. I was really reluctant because I'm like, do I want all these strange people coming through my home? You know, and I still had a fairly young son at the time, so Fritz had the vision to build the studio in the garage, and God just worked on my heart, and you know, I was okay with that. So we have the studio, and we have people come to give their testimonies, and it's amazing. Like, I can't imagine life without it now.
It's a big, but you still all have full-time jobs as well.
Yes.
You know, this is what you do on Thursday nights as a ministry to help people, which is what I love. How do you fund God Stories Radio? Because I want to see it continue on, because obviously you're ministering to me every week.
Yeah, we have to rely on sponsors.
Okay.
And we have to rely on people just being touched enough, moved enough that God has moved them to donate.
Yeah.
So, we've asked them to, we call it press the button, but there's a donate button on our homepage. And we just, we've asked people to be a part of the movement because we feel like this is God's movement, and, we feel that He's sweeping the world right now, just trying to move people to come towards Him. And so we just want to get out there as much as possible.
Well, and the other thing, too, Tina, Mike, and Fritz, is so neat about your ministry is that you don't have to go there in person to give your testimony.
No.
Even though the studio is there in your home, people can call in, which I did, and I heard somebody just the other night call in from California, and people can continue to give their stories. And you even want people that are listening today, if you have a testimony, you have a story, and you want to get your story out there. Honestly, when they first asked me, I said, my story's not even that exciting. I don't even want to give my testimony. And boy, did God do a work in my heart, because they told me, and I'm going to tell you this too, everybody's story is important.
Amen.
And it will impact people for the kingdom. Anytime we talk about Jesus and what Jesus is doing in our hearts personally, nobody can refute my story, your story, Tina, Fritz, and Mike. Our stories are given to us by God, for God to use. And you talk about, I think your vision is to bring hope and encouragement to people. That's what your job is, right?
Hope, comfort, and encouragement, yes.
Our mission statement is bringing hope, comfort, and encouragement through the power of the Christian testimony.
And how do you encourage people, like you had to do with me? How do you get that listener out there today, that viewer who is saying, I've got a testimony, but I don't really want to say it. So how would you encourage someone today to call you, to go to the website?
It's funny that you would ask that, because I call it seed time and harvest, because a lot of times we'll approach them, plant the seed, they won't be ready. And then it takes the time, and then all of a sudden, like you, a perfect example of that, and then all of a sudden the Lord works on them and they call us and say, I'm ready.
Yeah.
We've had several people like that. Some are ready to do it right away, and others, that don't really think. If I could encourage folks out there that don't think they have a real big story, I'm not a big rock star and I came to know Jesus kind of thing. You don't. Every story is impactful.
But what's the verse that talks about be ready? If somebody asks you, I don't know where the verse is.
1 Peter 3:16.
Good job. It says to be ready to give an answer for why you believe what you believe, right?
But do it with gentleness and respect.
Oh, I love that.
Amen to that.
I think a lot of times too that people, if they don't see something tangible, they don't know how to connect, all the dots. But if they had focused a little bit more on the fact that there may be just one person out there that their testimony means life for that person, or incredible encouragement, they would do it in a heartbeat.
Absolutely. It's like if somebody's knocking on your door, it's almost like you got to answer the door.
Well, there's not always someone out there that's dealing with drugs or something else. Like your story had to touch, as I say, those someone's out there that in your particular situation, they needed to hear what you had to say.
Absolutely. And so you guys are open to anybody calling you and asking to give their testimony, right?
Absolutely, yes.
And so I hope that's a lot of what this program will do today, twofold. I want people to be able to know about God Stories Radio so that they're like me and they can, on their walk, they can listen to the podcast and be encouraged and be given hope. So I hope that's one thing that happens. And then also I hope that viewers today will listen to this and say, God's impressing upon me to get out there and to give my testimony. All you got to do is call them. You don't have to go there in person. You can go there in person, but you can call them. If you have a story and God is prompting you today to tell your story, you need to be calling God Stories Radio. They have testimonies too, and they have testimonies that they want to share with us very briefly, but we're going to have to take a break. When we get back from our break, we're going to hear from Tina. She has an incredible story, Fritz and Mike, and see how they came to know the Lord. So stay with us, and we'll be right back.
Go. Make a difference.
I'm so glad that you're here with us today. God Stories Radio is out there to give you hope, encouragement, and what was the other word?
Comfort.
Comfort. Hope, encouragement, and comfort. And so this is such a wonderful time to be able to spend with you three and to hear your hearts and to encourage our viewers today to listen. There's so much junk out there, guys. There's so much stuff we could be looking at and listening to that is not helping build the kingdom, not helping grow our faith. When I listen to somebody's testimony, I grow personally closer to the Lord. Sometimes, Mike, we use these churchy words like testimony, and somebody out there will be saying, what is a testimony? What does that even mean? How would you define, because you're asking for testimonies,
right.
What is a Christian testimony?
Well, first would be where you were, what your life was about before Jesus, as I say, hit you with a 2x4 upside the head. And then as he takes you through and as he gets a hold of you and everything else, where he's taking you from there, from where you were to where he's taking you out, what he's done for you, that you can actually share with someone else that would, say, open their eyes and say, well, who is this Jesus that you're doing this for? And
I love that. And so what does it do you think, when we give our testimony? How does it affect people? Obviously, it helps give them hope, encouragement, and comfort. But what does it ultimately do? It honors the Father.
Right.
Glorifies Father.
And that's what we're all about, right?
Yes.
It's been our only agenda since we started.
I know, I love that. It's so pure, and it's just such a wonderful, wonderful ministry. Tina, I've not listened to the guys' testimonies yet, but I have listened to yours, and you have a profoundly impactful testimony. Just give us little bits and pieces of how you came to know the Lord, what your background was.
So when I was about 4 years old, my parents decided to send me to a Catholic school. And that was sort of my first experience with just getting to know God. So from the time of a small child, I knew I always believed in God, but I didn't have this relationship with Jesus. And it wasn't until after my parents were divorced and we moved to the United States, my mother and I, that I really, I kept inquiring, who's this Jesus? Tell me more about him. I want to know. And it's kind of unusual because I was a young child still. But I really had a yearning to know him. But it wasn't until I was 18 that my best friend's mom led me to Christ.
Praise God.
Yeah.
Praise God. But you had a tough time.
I did. Yeah.
You want to just touch on a little bit of that? I don't want you to have to feel like you need to get into all the sort of details, but sometimes for viewers to hear somebody that's like you on the other side, like Mike said.
Yeah. It was difficult. I feel like I had sort of an idyllic childhood in England growing up because I was loved and I had parents that cared about me and so forth. My mom and I have had a difficult relationship growing up, but I always knew that she loved me and, she always took really good care of me and so forth. It was just, I think, we've had some difficulties with other things. And when I moved to the States, I think I got removed from my comfort, my place of comfort and security, and I had to deal with things in my life that I wasn't prepared to deal with at such a young age. Things that you don't expect to happen to you as a child.
Yeah. And if our viewers want to hear more, here's what I want them to do. I want them to go to the website, God Stories Radio, click on show number 96. Is that right?
Yeah.
And listen in detail to your testimony, because honestly, it changed my life, hearing your story and to see how faithful you are and what God has done in and through you. We can't help but hear a testimony like yours and be changed. So thank you for that and for the boldness in sharing that over the radio. And again, I encourage our viewers to go to listen to that. So thank you, Tina. Fritz, you have a testimony?
I sure do, but we don't have enough time.
I know.
So,
I wish we did.
I'll just touch on a few things, I guess. I came from a pretty privileged upbringing. My dad was very successful in real estate, and so I didn't want for anything, but my dad made me work for everything.
Good.
And
good.
which was great.
Yeah.
So I really developed some good work ethic and whatnot, but I was always that guy that thought I was going to be young forever, so I made choices based on that, which were terrible.
Yeah.
So as I got older, I can still recount the times that I could hear the still small voice.
Wow.
And there's always those times where God is prompting you to do the right thing. And I think even if you're saved and turn your back on God, or even if you're not saved, He still speaks to you.
Absolutely.
In that still small voice. And I can recount multiple times where He's done that, but I chose to make other decisions and go my own way. So 2010 seemed to be the year of the baseball bat up, or the 2x4 upside the head, as Mikey says.
Right.
You know, I had to undergo my second open heart surgery. I had to, and my wife and I had gotten divorced, and left me with a special needs child who needed a liver and a kidney transplant. And as said before, I had reasoned in my mind, and I'll never make fun of people ever again that consider, suicide or anything like that. It's a very serious subject to me and to Mikey. And I had really reasoned it out. I sat down and planned it out, and I said, my brother-in-law and sister are local. They'll take care of Aubrey. They'll make sure she's fine. There won't anybody miss a miserable guy like me, So I had lost the real estate business and went through a divorce, and then surgery that year, and then on to my daughter getting the liver kidney transplant. And that's when I met Mike that night.
And he helped pull you out.
At Celebrate Recovery at Real Life. I walked in, I met Mike. He's never left my side. And long story short, that's how God Stories Radio was birthed. And kind of a testimony in a nutshell there. But I think I'm number 54.
That's what I was going to ask you. What number you are? 54.
Testimony number 54.
It took them a long time.
God Stories Radio. Go to number 54 to hear more about Fritz's story. We're in a season of Thanksgiving here and just being grateful. I'm so grateful for your testimonies, for your stories, and how God is working in and through each one of you. Mike, you've got a great one, and we're almost out of time. Can you tell me bits and pieces of yours in a minute?
Okay. I was going through a second divorce, and was living high and thinking everything was fine. And then she uttered the words, "I want a divorce." And right then and there, again, being the second time, I figured that was my 2x4 upside the head.
Yeah.
And I asked why. Why is, I was a good guy. I was a nice guy.
Yeah.
And he showed me early on that I was... in those marriages, I was the selfishness, being self-absorbed. It was all about me. Yeah. So I got the answer, and I, being Christian, that's how He found me. And, I thought 2006 was going to be my worst year, and it was my best year because that's when He found me.
Wow. Amen. Praise God. A lot of times people think, they'll hear a testimony like yours, and they'll see you up here. You're not without struggles, though, to this day. Life is still tough, and I think that's real important to paint an authentic, real picture, because there are a lot of millennials now that are starting to tune in, and they don't want to hear, once I received Jesus, now everything is great. It's a whole lot better, but it's not a perfect life, and we still have to work to be faithful and to grow closer to Him. And one way to do that is through listening to others' testimonies. And I think whether you're in a Bible study now, viewers, or not, or maybe you're not even in a community going to church, I hope that you are. But one thing that you can do to grow in your faith is to surround yourself with Christian friends. Maybe you don't feel like you have any friends. Go to God Stories Radio, and you'll have at least 3 friends that are here on the couch today with me today, and they would love to hear your testimony and your story, and love to have you come out to the house and to tell your story, so that 2 reasons: you can grow in your faith, and you can help other people grow in your faith, and obviously that brings you closer to the Lord, and it honors and glorifies God. That's what we're all about, and particularly during this Thanksgiving season, find ways to be grateful. Find ways to get out of your self-pity parties that we all do from time to time, right, guys?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
And we're sitting there feeling sorry for ourselves when all we really have to do is go out there and serve somebody.
Right.
What an easy thing that was for you to do, in a way. I don't want to minimize it, but for you to be at the door greeting people. Look what you did, Mike, when you greeted Fritz and changed his life forever, or helped get him on the trajectory of
Saved
Jesus.
him from it.
Yes, absolutely.
Isn't that funny that we're in our worst time of need, that when we serve others,
Yes.
Everything's all taken care of.
Absolutely. Well, I want us to be encouraged today, viewers, to go and to serve and to do the things that God is calling you to do. This threesome today, they didn't have any idea that they would be in a ministry that was radio related. Even though they have other full-time jobs, they're in a ministry because they heard that still small voice and they said, yes, Lord. And now they're doing something that is probably impacting who knows how many people worldwide, 92 countries and all over the United States. So go, do something different, serve, be grateful for what God's given you, especially during this holiday season. And I forgot to mention too, Tina and Fritz gave me these beautiful flowers. When they walked in the door, this is how they greeted me with these, what a simple gesture and how much that touched my heart. So thank you for the flowers, Tina, Fritz, Mike. Thank you for being here with us today and all you're doing for God Stories Radio. Any little final word? I know sometimes I cut people off and then they're like, oh, I wish I could have said something else.
I just want to thank you personally for taking time out of your busy schedule to give your testimony.
Right.
Oh, it was my joy. Thank you for that.
It was our
Fritz.
joy as well, and I know it's touched many.
Well,
And
out
her
there,
session
so
is
thank you.
166.
Yes.
166.
Yes.
Thank you, Tina.
Hashtag
Yes.
166.
Hashtag 166. Thanks again, guys, for being
Thank
here.
you
Love you
so
all.
much. Thank
Love
you.
God
Appreciate
Stories
it.
Radio. Be sure you go to that website. I don't want to take you away from television, but I do want to because I want you to listen to the radio. I want you to listen when you're in the car. I want you to listen when you're walking down the street, when you're lying down, when you're getting up. You need to be hearing others' testimonies so that you can grow in your faith. We've got more coming up, so stay with us.
Go. Make a difference.
Powerful words and discussions, even challenging in a lot of ways, right? Well, it certainly makes me want to re-examine my own priorities. I want to make sure that everything I'm doing is in line with God's will for my life, being involved in ministries and activities that are pleasing to my Father, and never just spinning my wheels. Well, I know you're super busy, and here at Good Life 45, we want to serve you in the best ways we can and make it even easier for you to find hope in this challenging world. That's why our focus on Welcome Home Go is to encourage you to find ways to serve that fit your lifestyle and your set of God-given gifts. Friends, we need to be learning, applying our hearts to instruction, finding ways to be winsome to the world, but then going out and serving like Jesus would do. He would go and serve others. That's our calling. God's going to use you in ways you can't even imagine. So keep learning and growing, but take another step. You don't have to go across the ocean. Like the program you just saw, we want to share countless examples of ways you can change people's lives right here, right now. Go. Just make a difference in someone's life. And that's it for today. Thanks so much for watching Welcome Home Go. I hope to see you out there, and God bless you.
You just watched Welcome Home Go, a Good Life 45 original production that makes you part of our Hope Team here on Good Life 45, where hope happens.